Hello everyone, my name is Olivia and welcome to my autumn TBR video. I am so excited that autumn is just around the corner, and for me it begins at the beginning of August. I know other people get very mad about that, but for me I am in the autumnal mood the moment August begins. So now that it is September, I thought it was appropriate to share my autumnal TBR video because I am so excited about every single one of these books that I plan to read during the spooky season. And before we get into it, this video is sponsored by Book of the Month, so to tell you a little bit more about that, let's go over to Future Olivia. I am so happy to be working with Book of the Month again, and they are a book subscription service that promotes new and emerging authors to help readers discover new books that they will love. Each month, their team vets hundreds of novels and provides readers with a selection of new and early release titles to pick from, so you can spend more time reading and less time researching books to add to your TBR. The two books that I picked out for myself for this month were Love on the Brain by Ali Hazelwood. I loved Ali Hazelwood's previous novel, The Love Hypothesis, and I'm so happy it's one of Book of the Month selections for this month. And I'm also really excited about The Fortunes of Jaded Women because I had previously never heard about it before, but I was introduced to it through Book of the Month service, which is amazing because they always introduce me to new titles that I had not known about previously. Be sure to use my code LEAVES to get your first novel for $9.99. Thank you so much to Book of the Month for sponsoring yet another video of mine, and let's get into the autumnal TBR. So the first book that I want to read during fall is The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. This is the first book in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and I have never read it before, despite it being one of my favorite movie series of all time. I am so excited to read this book and vlog it because I want to share my experience with you all. I want to document my first time reading The Lord of the Rings, and I think autumn time is the perfect time to read this book because it just has this cozy feeling to it. The Shire feels so warm and inviting, and the rest of the book is very action-packed and really fun, and this is the perfect book to read it during autumn time and even winter time, and I am just so excited for it. So definitely look out for a future reading vlog featuring this book. I cannot describe how stoked I am to finally get into this book series. I think I'm going to love it. The next book that I'm hoping to read is going to be a buddy read with my friend Jessica, and it is The Library of the Unwritten. It says that books that aren't finished by their authors reside in the Library of the Unwritten in hell, but when restless characters who emerge from those unfinished stories escape, it is up to the librarian to track them down and keep the collection complete. This feels like a wonderful dark academia novel that I cannot wait to dive into during the autumnal time. I feel like that is the peak time for dark academia because everyone wears cozy sweaters, everyone is reading some dark fiction, and I think this is the perfect amount of darkness to really get me into the mood for autumn and November, and this book just sounds gorgeous and beautiful, and I haven't heard a lot of things about it, but I'm very excited for this because I did want to include at least one dark academia novel into this TBR video, and I also cannot wait to read it with my friend Jessica. I think I'm going to love this, hopefully. I don't know, I make some pretty big claims in terms of the books that I'm going to love, and a lot of them turn out to be disappointments, so I'm going to hold myself back from saying that I'm going to love this book. I'm going to read it, eventually, and that's all I'll say about that. I don't want to jinx it. Another book that seems like it was made to be read in October is The Silence of the Lambs. This is the second book in the Hannibal Lecter series that I am currently reading, and I cannot describe how happy I am that I saved this to read it during October. This book is dark, it's gruesome, it's just so intriguing. This also feels like a dark academia novel as well because Hannibal is very intellectual and there's a lot of different references to classical literature, and this seems like the perfect book to read during spooky season. The Silence of the Lambs will also give me an excuse to rewatch the movie, which I greatly enjoyed, and to continue my rewatch of Hannibal as well. I'm also excited to see how they change this for the show because the show is vastly different from the books, but they took the bare bones idea of Hannibal to create the show, so I'm wondering how the dynamic between Clarice and Hannibal in this book reminds me of Hannibal and Will in this show. I think I'm going to have a blast reading this. The perfect October book. So excited for it. I'm going to say excited so many times in this video, but this is my favorite time of the year. I feel so much happiness thinking about October, thinking about Halloween, thinking about spooky season, so don't mind me while I say excited 50 times in this video. Another book that came in yesterday in the mail that seems like the perfect book to read during October and November and September is The Marriage Portrait by Maggie O'Farrell, the author of one of my favorite books, Hamnet. In an article in The Guardian, it says at 15, Lucrezia marries the Duke, a man almost twice her age, and she is thrust into the limelight of a troubled court whose customs are opaque when her arrival is not universally welcomed. And it says that Maggie O'Farrell's book is going to focus on Lucrezia's duty to provide the Duke with an heir. So I'm very keen to get into this book because I've only read one book by Maggie O'Farrell so far, and it was Hamnet, and that became one of my favorite books of all time. And the way that she shines a light on different women in history who are not as well known really fascinates me. It reminds me of Rudis Apetys, who always focuses on a time in history that not a lot of people know about. So Maggie O'Farrell is probably going to shine a light on Lucrezia and her life as a duchess and the duties that come along with it while being so young compared to your husband and not being universally welcomed by the court. I think it's going to be fascinating, and I definitely do have to get to Maggie O'Farrell's backlist as well because people have told me that all her books previously written before Hamnet are also amazing. So thank you so much to Knopf for gifting me a copy of this. You know I'm going to love it. You know I'm going to praise it. You know I'm probably going to recommend it endlessly once I finally read it. The next couple of books that I hope to read during this season are actually all ebooks. So I have my iPad here to share with you all the books that I want to read. So one that I want to get to is We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson, the author of The Haunting of Hill House. The synopsis is very vague for this story, and that's what intrigues me because I always see people recommending it during Halloween time, and this seems like the perfect book to read during October. So it says, my name is Mary Catherine Blackwood. I'm 18 years old, and I live with my sister Constance. Everyone else in my family is dead. This seems right up my alley. It's spooky, it's creepy, has gothic elements to it probably, and I know it will be the perfect read to read on a rainy day, and I want to see why everyone keeps on recommending it for Halloween time. Another ebook that I want to get to that is relatively short is Hurricane Season by Fernanda Melchor, and it is translated by Sophie Hughes. A witch is dead in this village, and these children find her body, and that creates a murder mystery that takes this town by storm. It says we follow an unreliable narrator lingering on new details, new acts of depravity and cruelty. Melchor extracts some tiny shred of humanity from these characters that most would write off as utterly redeemable, forming a lasting portrait of a damned Mexican village. This is another book that I saw a lot of people recommending around Halloween time last year, and I never got around to it, but I do want to get to it because I want to read a Latina horror. I think that's going to be really fun, and this also seems relatively short from what I can remember, but it does give me the Crucible vibes in the way that people are scared of a witch and they get very paranoid and people start acting out and acting very different, or humanity just kind of falls off at the seams. So if you have read Hurricane Season, please let me know what you think about it because I haven't heard anyone talk about this book and I want to know if I'm going to love it. But we will see. I'll form my own opinions. I'll share with you what I think if I do love it. The next book that I want to read, I have seen in countless bookstores. I always pick it up, take a picture of it, and never actually buy it. And it is called Madam by Phoebe Wine. This is a dark academia gothic novel following an all-girls boarding school in Scotland. And we follow our main character who is a recent hire as a teacher at this academy. While she's teaching at this academy, she discovers that the traditional way of teaching these girls is not aligning to her own beliefs. And when a teacher mysteriously departs, Rose will stop at nothing to find out what happened to that teacher. I guess I do have a couple of dark academia novels on my TBR that I cannot wait to get to. This is a book that always intrigues me when I see it at bookstores. I always read the synopsis over and over again, and it seems like the perfect book for me that I will greatly enjoy because I love reading about academies, especially the mysteries that are lurking just beneath the surface. And I love that it follows not a student but a teacher who is unfurling the mystery before her very eyes while she is a recent hire, so she's not familiar with the landscape, and I'm sure she's going to get to know a couple of students and a couple of teachers as well, and it's going to be the perfect read. Definitely the perfect read for a rainy day because it's set in Scotland, so it's going to be dark and rainy and gloomy. I'm finally getting to, after seeing it so many times in bookstores and after picking it up endlessly and thinking, I really want to read that, but I never get around to it. The last book that I have on my autumn TBR is definitely not for everyone, but I have seen it recommended to me so many times on TikTok that I just have to bite the bullet and read it because weirdly it sounds right up my alley. And it is Tender is the Flesh. This is translated from Spanish and is the perfect book if you're a fan of Hannibal and will be featured in a future reading vlog that I am weirdly excited about filming. Tender is the Flesh follows our main character Marcos, who lives in a society where a virus has swept through the world and has made animals virtually uneatable. So they have to resort to another way of eating meat. people. So he works in a plant that turns people into food. And one day he comes across one of the live crops and decides to save her and treat her as a human. People recommend this book if you're into really twisted, weird literary fiction, and I want to delve deeper into that. After watching Hannibal and it quickly becoming one of my favorite shows of all time, I definitely do want to dive into that subgenre of horror that is so gruesome and so jarring to read about and watch, and I do want to do that with Tender is the Flesh. I have never dove into horror fiction. I've never really read an outright horror book, and I think this is going to be the perfect book to dive into. People said it's definitely not for everyone, so I'm wondering if I'm either going to hate it or love it, but I feel like if I love the show Hannibal and its twistedness and its gore, I think I'm going to love this story. If you've read this book before, let me know your thoughts, because I don't see a lot of people talking about it other than TikTok, so I want to know people's thoughts about it. I think it's going to be a weird time. You will definitely see me react to it in a future reading vlog. That is my autumnal TBR video. We have dark academia, we have historical fiction, we have some really twisted horror novels that I am so excited to get into because I've never really read horror before. I've read murder mysteries, but I've never read outright horror, so I think Hurricane Season and Tender is the Flesh are going to be two very interesting books that are going to delve me into that genre of fiction. Let me know if you're excited for me to read any of these books, and tell me some of the titles that are on your autumnal TBR. I would love to hear some recommendations down below. And as a reminder, be sure to check out Book of the Month and use my code, which will be featured right here, to get a discount off your first order. Thank you so much to Book of the Month for sponsoring this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you have not subscribed so already, be sure to do so. And if you want to follow me anywhere else on social media, all those links will be down below. I will see you in another video very soon. If you have made it this far in the video, leave a red heart emoji down below, or some autumnal leaves as well. It's your choice. Thank you so much for watching until the end, and I will see you very soon. Bye!